Good morning, everybody. I should say good afternoon. Whenever you're watching this, summer in Arizona is not for the faint of heart, right? So welcome to Wealth Wednesday. This is our long video version. And summer here is not for the faint of the heart for the sourdough baker either. So you're talking triple digit heat. We're into it right now. It's the beginning of June, June 2nd. Triple digit heat, single digit humidity, sometimes low double digit humidity, but it's a climate that baking experts will tell you confidently, repeatedly, is one of the worst environments on the planet for working with dough. Here's the thing though, nobody told me that when I started. I began baking in the spring of 2020, and I was headed straight into an Arizona summer, completely unaware that what I was attempting was, according to every experienced baker, unnecessarily difficult. And my dough didn't know that either. So we kind of just figured it out together. About 2 or 3 years in, maybe 4, when I finally learned that Arizona's extremely low humidity makes sourdough baking genuinely challenging. My first reaction wasn't frustration. I basically just laughed because by then I'd already baked hundreds of loaves. I had already developed my process. I'd already built confidence, consistency, and technique. And without ever knowing, I was supposed to struggle. So what I didn't know didn't limit me. And I've been thinking about that ever since because the same thing is true for you and your money. Summer changes everything until it doesn't. And there is a shift that happens every year around this time. Routines loosen, schedules change, kids are home, vacations get planned or get gone on. Is that a word? The discipline that felt really solid in January, because that was just yesterday, right? Starts to feel optional by June. And money habits, which are really just financial routines with a purpose, follow that same seasonal pull. So the question isn't whether summer will disrupt your financial rhythm. It will. The question is whether that disruption becomes a full detour or a full stop. Because here's what most people don't realize. Your financial plan doesn't take a summer break, but our attention to it often does. Am I right? And attention is everything. I like to call it the Arizona principle. When you bake sourdough in Arizona without knowing the odds, you don't compensate for the humidity you don't have. You just bake and you adjust naturally. You pay attention to the dough instead of the rule book or the watch or the timer. That's what I was looking for. You develop instincts because you really have no other choice. And somehow the bread turns out beautiful, not despite the conditions, but because you stayed present to them. And your financial life in summer works the same way. The conditions change, spending increases, income sometimes shift. I mean, have you seen an electric bill in Arizona in the summer? Routines that worked in February don't necessarily work in July. But none of that has to derail you as long as you stay present to it. And the baker who panics when the dough behaves differently in summer is the one who loses the loaf. The baker who adjusts, who pays attention, who responds instead of reacts, still pulls something beautiful out of the oven. You already know how to do this. You do it every single season of your life. You just haven't always applied it to your money. So let's talk about what summer money habits actually look like. Let's make this real and specific because discipline without application is just theory. It's a pipe dream, right? So here's what staying present to your finances in summer actually looks like. Number 1, you're checking in instead of checking out. I mean, not obsessively, not from anxiety, but with intention. It's kind of the same way you check on dough that's proofing in a warmer kitchen. Like there's a big difference between proofing dough in a 70-degree kitchen and a 78-degree kitchen, because that's what I keep my temperature on during the summer, 78 degrees. I know it's crazy, but it's cool in my house compared to outside. A quick weekly look at where you are keeps a small drift from becoming big damage. Number 2, you plan for the spending that's coming. You know, summer isn't a surprise. It comes every year, right after spring. And then spring comes after winter, and winter comes after fall, right? So your vacations, your activities, higher electric bills in Arizona, none of it is unexpected. And the people who feel financially stressed in August are usually the people who didn't plan for June and April or March. Number 3, you protect the non-negotiables. This is your retirement contributions, your emergency fund, protection strategies. These do not get paused because the kids are out of school. They are actually the container that holds everything else together. You don't stop feeding your starter just because it's hot outside or just because you forgot. I can't say forget, but you know what I'm saying. You give yourself permission to adjust. This is number 4, without abandoning. And this one matters the most. Summer might mean that you contribute a little less one month to your retirement, and it might mean that you shift a budget category or two, and it might mean that you have a harder conversation about a vacation you can't fully afford. But none of that is failure. Adjustment is just part of the process. And what's not part of the process is disappearing entirely and coming back in September wondering where everything went. So let's talk about this mid-year moment, because we're mid-year right now. I know it seemed just like January yesterday, but we're June. We're in June. And here's where something we're sitting with. We're almost halfway through the year. July will be halfway through the year. So those goals you set back in January, those financial intentions you had when the year felt fresh and possible, that new year feeling, how are they doing? Not perfectly, not completely, just how are they doing? Check in. Because mid-year is actually one of the most powerful moments in financial planning. Not January 1st when everything feels theoretical, not December 31st when it's too late to course correct. Right now, when there's still enough year left to matter and enough hindsight to be honest. This is the moment the baker checks the dough, not to judge it, just to see what it needs. So I want to come back to that Arizona story for a moment, because the lesson isn't really about humidity. It's about what happens when you start before you feel ready, when you begin without knowing all the reasons you might fail, and when you trust the process because you fully understand it. A lot of people are waiting to engage with their finances until they feel qualified enough to do it right, until they understand investing, until they know what all the terms mean, until they feel less behind, until they make more money, until the timing is better. I could go on, but I think you get the point. Here's what 4 years of Arizona sourdough taught me. The conditions are never perfect. The knowledge is never complete. I am still learning to this day. And the people who wait for both, they're still waiting while everyone else is pulling beautiful loaves out of the oven. Listen, you don't need everything. You just need to start somewhere. And if you're not sure where that somewhere is, that's exactly what a financial review is for. I'm offering free summer financial reviews. Summer is actually one of the best times to look at your financial plan. Not because everything's perfect, but because you're halfway through the year and there's still time to adjust. I'm offering these free summer financial reviews through the end of June. I may take it on out until July because we're still halfway through the year. It's a simple, no pressure conversation, just to look at where you are, see what's working, see what's not needs adjusting, and just what you might not know yet that could change everything. It's no jargon, no obligation, no pitch, just clarity, because what you don't know shouldn't limit you. Have a good one.